when I was 13, 14, I was mad into breakdancing. I was in a few breakdance crews. My breakdance name was Zeus. I had that on my tracksuits. And so I used to do a lot of dancing in that kind of style. But I think that around that time, my only kind of bit of entertainment came on a Friday night in the local disco, doing MC Hammer dancing. That was kind of the max. And so, no, I wasn't... when you go to secondary school, I was a good singer when I was in like primary school and junior school, and I went to secondary school and I was always asked by the music teacher to join the choir, but it was not really a done thing, it was a bit naff. You had a choice of being in the football team or being in the choir, and I went more for the football team at the time. So I had entertained through my life, but not for a few years. I remember meeting Rob outside, and he was wearing, if I can remember correctly, like this orange hoodie top, and he was with his mum. And I was with my mum. And I think we were probably the only two who turned up with our mums, And I remember just kind of at the door meeting up with Rob, and we kind of walked in together. But when we got in there was 4 other people. But I don't think the other guy even got a chance to take his coat off, if I'm honest. I don't think... he didn't seem to... I don't remember him staying around very long at all. And then the fun started. There wasn't an audition, it's not like you see these shows now where there's a queue of 1,000 people. So I don't know what Nigel would have done. I think he'd made his mind up, but we all did a little bit of dancing. And, I remember Jason and Howard being really good at the dancing kind of thing. Me and Rob being not so good, and Gary being pretty bad at the dancing. And then probably the opposite way around for the singing, and we sang a song and we did a little bit of dancing, and we kind of got to know each other a little bit, and Nigel's a little low, and and then that was it. We kind of left, and we went, and I seem to remember we went to Boots for lunch, and we sat down, and we all had like a sandwich. I think Nigel bought us a sandwich and a cup of coffee or something, and we all sat down and decided how we were going to become a big band, how we were going to get world domination, and what we were going to spend our first bit of money on. And I also seem to remember at that table, although I could be wrong, us saying, but we'd finish on top. We'd never go beyond, that moment. I remember one of the sweetest things that happened around that time. My mates, where I used to live, we used to always go out on a Friday and Saturday night, but they knew I was a bit down for cash now. And I got this card, and I'll never forget this, I got this card, a good luck card, and 80 quid, and they'd all put a tenner of the wages into the card for me so I could go out and have a night out, have a weekend out with the boys. And that was really special. I had good friends, man, really good friends. I've never forgot that to this day, that, they really helped me out when I really needed a little bit of money. Our first gig. Now, you've got to bear in mind, I'd been rehearsing this show for however long it was, a month or whatever. There was one point in this whole show where I had a lead role. One point. And I actually took the front of the stage, and I think it was for a song called Waiting Around. You've got me hooked on a string so long. You've had me hooked on a string so long, and now I must go. And I think that I opened this routine up. And I'd been practicing my counting on that bus, day, night, in bed, day, night. And I messed it up. My first moment, I remember being in the dressing room after, shitting my pants. I thought that was it. I thought I was out of the band. I remember just sitting there thinking, oh my God. We had all our family and everybody there. The rest of it was easy. I was at the back. I could just follow the boys, But there was me one moment of them being at the front, the limelight, and I messed up. And I just remember I thought that was it. I thought in the dressing room, I'm going to be out of the band. We had our first photo shoot, and then a couple of little small TV things. Then started to play a few clubs. And a lot of gay clubs was where we started off. I remember you know, we'd be in our dressing room and the guy had introduced, you know, yeah, take that, and the song would start, and we'd all be trying to get out of our dressing room, you know, and we knew we had like 4 bars to get to the stage, but, you know, as you're running through this club, you were being grabbed, you know, people were grabbing your ass and like holding on to you, and we'd kind of, the song would kick in, and by the time we actually got onto the stage, we're like halfway through it, you know, and there was only like, probably at those points, we used to have these little Tandy microphones, because you couldn't afford 5 radio mics, and no clubs would have 5 radio mics, so we had these little Tandy £10 microphones, where we used to cut the wire off, and Gary would have like a live mic, or there might have been 2 live mics that were passed around, but mainly passed around between Howard and Gary, that kind of vibe, because Howard would do some harmony, or Rob would do some rapping, or, you know, that kind of thing. So I was a little, and you'd dance away, and you know, you had all these moves, and you'd at some point obviously try and do a breakdance move, and the end of your mic would fall off, but you're still up there in your little cycling shorts, your mic's hanging off, your little wire, trying to do your thing, trying to look dignified, you know, and still really believing that it's real. It's real. I'm singing out. Can you not hear me? What do you mean? So yeah, those days were a lot of learning and a lot of just finding your way around, you know, and very humorous, and going up and down the country in vans. And then we had our first single, and we had our first video. And I think that was the next stage, really, was going into the whole do what you like kind of era. I just remember when we got our first chart position, maybe there was a bit of naivety in it, but we all went round to Nigel's house, really excited, you know. I think we had like champagne on ice and all that kind of stuff. And I seem to remember us being sat in Nigel's van, and we sat there listening to this chart rundown, and we thought, you know, 40 down. And we were thinking, yeah, we've given out our flyers, we've done our gigs, we've done our shows, you know, been on telly a few times. And we've got all the way down to number 2. And I think we actually thought a little bit, maybe we've gone in at 1, you know, maybe we've gone straight in with our first single at 1. And obviously the next day we found out we went in at 82. Yeah, so then I think we realised it's not quite going to be as easy as we thought. I think there's certain areas when you look at where you felt more confident in what you were doing. You know, you get given roles, you know, you get almost pigeonholed into in a sense as to, you know, Jason's the sensitive one, and, you know, the deep one, and, you know, I was like, you know, the cute smiley one, you know, Rob was the, you know, the funny one, and Gary was the songwriter, and Howard was the body, you know, or whatever, you know, you get given these kind of, oh, that's horrible to say that Howard was the body. Howard was a great singer, actually. He did great harmony. And so you get given these little kind of roles. I think the times throughout the whole band where I felt at my most confident was when we were talking about putting shows together and styling shows. I think that is where, I think I've always had quite a visual side to me. And I think that in that sense, whether it was in the look of the band, whether it was in the dressing of them, and, you know, or whether it was putting shows together, thinking of ideas for, you know, how we'd perform this song, how we would do that. That is where I found more confidence. In my singing within the band, I was never that confident, you know. Not through lack of trying, but it wasn't a place where I felt really comfortable. I remember the first time I heard Rob really sing, it was in Amsterdam. We were out in Amsterdam, and we went to a karaoke bar, and we all had a little smoke. I turned green and got carried home by security. But I remember getting up and actually hearing Rob, I think he sang Mac the Knife, was the song that he sang, and that was the first time I really heard Rob sing out, you know, and it was actually great to hear that. I don't know whether there was, you know, did Rob want to sing more songs? It's something you'd have to ask him. Did he feel bad about it in that way? You know, was there a competition between them? You know, I'm not so sure. You know, I looked through bits of footage, I've seen footage, and you know what I see is they got on actually really well for most of the time. Now what went on under that, I'm not sure.